welcome everybody. My name is Phil Denchi, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to Lisa Kemp, who is the president of the Reporters Association and previously officially was the chair of the committee, but that term is changing now. So, but I would ask Lisa to kick us off, if you would, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming today. First official order of business, we will approve the ESS Coordinating Committee meeting summaries from November 14th and November 26th. I would entertain a motion for approval. I would take that motion. Do I have a second?
This is Jamie. I'll second.
May we repeat the names of the It's been motioned by Denise Baker and seconded by Dylan Malone to approve the meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, next up is the election of officers. So I will open the floor up for nominations.
So we have 3 officers' positions specified in policies and procedures: the chair, the vice chair, and a secretary treasurer. As I mentioned before, Lisa had been serving as the chair of the coordinating committee during the past year. Natalie has been serving as the secretary treasurer, and then Julie Haggerty has been the vice chair. That is who the current officers have been, and it is the prerogative of the voting members of the ESS committee to make nominations for the officer positions, and I turn it back to Lisa to facilitate any nominations. You can do it as a group if you wanted to make a group nomination, or you can start and just do them one at a time, whatever the preference is of the group. And before we get deeper into that, I do want to just acknowledge a couple of new participants. First of all, welcome, Dylan. I'm glad you could be here today. And went through the list. I also have Jolynn from Plymouth County, who's a member of this committee. So welcome, Jolynn Goodchild. And I'm needing some help. AGC.
That's Amy from Lyon County.
Okay, thank you. Amy from Lyon County. She's not a member of the committee, but is a participant today. Welcome. You may have to help me with this one too. Danielle Mikulski. Okay.
I'll find out.
Okay.
She's an abstract Associates.
Okay. She's an abstractor.
Okay, very good. Danielle, welcome. And I think I missed Eric Sloan earlier. Eric is a member of the committee representing the County Information Technology Group. Jamie Sturgill, a member of the committee, has joined us, so welcome. Renee Arnold is with us. And I think that's everybody. So I'll stop now and turn it back to Lisa.
Have any nominations for the position of chairperson of ESS Coordinating Committee, either online or in-house? I can make a motion for me.
Yes.
I move that we.
Well, no, because you're not on the committee right now. Okay. You can if you want to, but
Nominations.
you can make a suggestion.
I will make the suggestion that in the past, the ESS Coordinating Committee chairperson has been the vice president of the Iowa County Reporters Association, who is currently Ann Ditzworth. And are you willing to serve in that position, in this position? I'm homeless now, so, okay. So would somebody like to officially nominate me? Ian? If I can.
I will nominate Ian as the chair. Natalie.
Do I have a second?
This is Jamie, I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor of, well, I think I have to, are there any other nominations? Going once, going twice. Nominations are closed. All those in favor of Ann Didsworth as ESS chairperson? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Vice chair. What's next? So I'll open up and entertain nominations for vice chair of the ESS coordinating committee. Currently, that is Julie Haggard.
Correct.
Nominate Julie Haggerty.
Do I have a second?
I'll
to the
second.
nomination?
I'll second. This is Jolene.
Okay. Any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. We'll vote. All those in favor of Julie Haggerty as vice chair of the ESS coordinating committee, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Secretary treasurer. Now open it up for nominations for that position on the ESS coordinating committee. Currently, that is Natalie Stefaner.
I nominate Natalie.
Figured I just have to make eye contact.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second. This is Jolene.
Okay, any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the nominations and vote. All those in favor of Natalie as secretary treasurer of the ESS coordinating committee, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you, everybody. And I wonder if you could test your audio, if you might indicate your ability to conduct the meeting from this point forward as the chair. Are you able to do that from where you're at?
Yes, would you like to proceed with the financial report?
All right, Samantha.
Scroll. I can
All right.
do it right here. All right, fourth quarter of 2024 financial reports are up first. The first thing we have highlighted here is the money market interest income. It was approved to start a money market sweep account with the Bankers Trust in November. So this is approximately 5 weeks worth of interest. We did start that very last week in November. This is to offset the Bankers Trust bank analysis fees. The interest that we are receiving is about 1.3% on our account, and it's has been a little bit better than the savings and credit that we were getting through Bankers Trust through the checking account. The savings credit was about 0.75%. So we're hoping to earn a little bit more through this money market account than what we were doing just before with a regular checking account. Are you looking
Oh,
the $4,759.73, and then also the negative $9,926.01. This was due to the refunds for maintenance fees. We had a few counties that we did not have to pay service providers for. So we did end up refunding them for the amount that we did not have to pay those service providers. Budgeted income for the fourth quarter came to $442,299.81, with revolving income for the fourth quarter of $9,958,867.64, with total income for the fourth quarter of $10,401,167.45. The AccuSoft Prism that is highlighted for $22,050. This was an expense from earlier in the year. We did have it approved to move it to the revolving expenses, but after reviewing the budget, we did have it approved to move back to the P&L. The DB2 is the same situation. We had this approved to move back to the budget as well for $10,432.84. Total budgeted expenses for the fourth quarter were $432,008.89. The next two, for the software expense and then also the system equipment, was just showing us moving the DB2 and the AccuSoft back to the profit, or back to the profit and loss, back to budgeted expenses. Depreciation for the quarter was $80,973.48, with revolving expenses of $9,954,747.54, with total expenses for the quarter of $10,435,255.42, with a negative net income of $34,087.97. Profit and loss for the year. That money market interest again at the top for $1,464.56. The bad payment fees for $355. This is due to chargebacks. At the beginning of the year, Professional Solutions was charging us $30 per chargeback. They did change that mid-year to $35. So we're charging the customers that money when they charge us back.
Samantha, may I suggest that as you go forward, to declare what page number you're on in the
Sure.
packet? We're having trouble displaying the PDF, so I'm gonna close that out, but you can keep going if you can let people know what page you're
Okay.
on.
Yeah, sure. I'm currently on page 12. Event income, this was for the deputies conference in September. We did have $4,200 come in for that. Fund 255 reimbursement was $482,551.53. This was over what we had originally projected for Fund 255, mostly due to that last few months having the submission higher than what we expected. The cost sharing credit in the local service provider.
Hey, how are
maintenance.
you?
Hello? Is there a comment or question? Okay, please proceed.
Okay, this was for the maintenance fees. Total
Okay.
income for that and to be $179,075.
She gave me one book and page and she's supposed to email me.
54 cents. Maybe to try to make them. Thank you. Budgeted income for the year was $1,828,097.76, with revolving income of $35,064,516.98, with total income of $36,892,614.74. I'm going to move to page 13. The bank analysis fees for the year are $6,632.31, After starting this money market account, we do expect this amount to be offset by the money market interest income for 2025. The AccuSoft Prism and the DB2 is highlighted at the bottom of page 13, again, just showing that we moved this back to the budgeted expenses. I'm gonna move to page 14. Total maintenance expense came to be $309,810.82. So this is what we pay to the service providers. And you can see that it's actually more than what we received in income of this $179.75.54. Budgeted expenses for the year came to $1,747,427.87. The next item, the software license expense for $78,963.50. This was the unexpected bill that we received from Susie. After looking at the bill, it was determined that we had been using more licenses than what we were paying for about the last 15 years. This was approved in the November meeting to pay for what we were using. Planned reserve expenses came to $85,867.98. With depreciation expense for the year of $331,486.63. With total revolving expenses of $35,069,307.62. With total expenses for the year of $37,234,090.10. The negative $45,921.96. We moved to the cloud in March, so this was to get the software equipment off the books. Total net income for the year came to $387,397.32, and that was negative, I'm sorry. We did go ahead and include a budgeted only profit and loss in the packet. I'm gonna go ahead and move to page 15. So this profit and loss would mostly not include the depreciation. A total budgeted income of $1,828,097.76. Moving to page 16. I'm sorry, page 17. With total budgeted expenses of $1,747,427.87 with a net income of $80,669.89. Page 18. The BT account at the end of the year, the checking account showed $230,415.87. This account was actually 0 at the end of the year, but because we are accrual-based accounting, it will show that we have money in that account. The BT money market sweep account ended with $934,297.27. We generally want to keep this over 1 million, but because of the holidays, the distributions and the money coming in was a little bit delayed. Total assets and liabilities equal $2,547,321.31. Moving to page 19. What was left in the Fund 255 account, that is held by the state treasurer's office was $164,286.98 for the year.
Are there any questions for Samantha? And as you're formulating those, I guess I would just say that we went over this in much greater detail with the finance subcommittee. Stacy is the chair of that, so she's here to supplement with any other comments. But I think the main thing that needs to be explained from the outside point of view is, how do you have such a negative number on the overall balance sheet or on the P&L? And the answer to that is that our accounting standards, as specified by our auditor, indicates that we have to recognize software development as an asset. And we went through over the last several years a lot of software development in terms of the rollout of the updated e-submission interface for both recorders and submitters. And then we also made a number of changes in our administrative applications. And each of those were substantive enough that instead of treating it as an expense, which it was, we were required by our auditing standards to count those as assets. And so the assets came in, it got added to the balance sheet, and everything looks great. Well, then the other side of the coin happens, and that is that you have a depreciation schedule. And the depreciation is happening during a period when we really are not building that many assets. We kind of completed that software development, and now we're sort of on the outflow side where things are being expensed. And so if you look at the overall P&L statement, that includes both revolving and budgeted expenses, it doesn't look so good. But there is a reason for that, and I think the budget itself with a positive net income, is really a better indicator of where we are from a financial position for the overall project. Then the other thing that I think deserves explanation is that, why did we retire such a high value of equipment? Well, the reason for that is that because of the switch to or the issues that we had with our operating system license with Linux, and at the same time, a decision to move to the cloud instead of owning your own equipment. That particularly the move to the cloud got moved up sooner than we would have ordinarily planned to do it. And the main reason for that is that because of issues we were having with our technical providers, we were operating on one firewall with no backup. And so if our primary firewall had ever failed, even though we had orders in for months for a replacement to the backup firewall, it just didn't happen. And so every day that we stayed operating on the existing equipment was a risk that we could go down. And so we made a decision that we needed to move into the cloud. And so it happened sooner than we might have otherwise planned to have it happen. And so we made the move to the cloud using a combination of the services at LightEdge and Altoona and also Amazon Web Services. We made that switch in March. And so at some point you have to recognize that you've retired the equipment, you're not using it anymore, and it needs to be written off the books because it's not an asset that we can use. It's just not being used. It's actually been retired. So the right thing to do is to recognize that in your financial reports, and that's what we did. So as we go forward, I think as we kind of move through the bubble of this depreciation, the overall P&L statement is going to improve. And also, depending on what happens in the next couple of years we might be making higher investments in new software or updated software that is going to be added back into the asset side of the balance sheet. So those are the main factors, and I would say, generally speaking, that we ended calendar year 2024 on a fairly positive note. E-submission activity actually did bounce back from what it had been, and that put us in a better position at the end of the year. You may recall, I'm sure the finance committee would remember this, that, you know, the budget for the year was built on a fairly narrow estimate of what net income would be. And so we actually ended up, particularly on our budget P&L, with a much more positive balance than we expected, primarily because uh, economic activity increased at the end of the calendar year. So those are the kind of explanatory notes that I would add. I'll add one more thing, and that is that, you know, for those of you who remember, there had been suggestions made that, you know, we needed to make more investments. We needed to invest the resources that we had. And, you know, my answer to that was, our priority is cash flow. We have to have cash flow to get distributions out to the counties. That's a more important thing than earning income. Nevertheless, we did continue to research that issue, and we talked to our financial institution, which was Bankers Trust, and we came up with a plan to move to basically what is referred to as a sweep account. Samantha was referring to it as sort of the money market account. And so it's been set up so that we're actually keeping our money in the money market or the sweep account so that we can earn interest from that, even though it isn't a lot. And we're actually, that switch put us in a slightly better financial position because it is more than offsetting our banking expenses. So instead of being a negative in terms of net income, it actually collectively between the two things is just a bit of positive. I don't want to overstate it, it's not huge, but it is better than what we were doing before. So I think the discussion that the finance subcommittee and you as the ESS committee had about, are there some options that we can explore? I think that produced a good result for us. I also want to say on that point that this doesn't necessarily mean that we're done exploring other options. I think where we stand in our cash position right now, I really don't think we're in a position to kind of put a big chunk of money into a CD or some other investment because, you know, our balance is lower than it has been because we have been in a more depressed period of the economy, and every dollar in our account for cash flow is very important. But that doesn't mean that we'll never do that. It just means that now is probably not the right time to do that, and we can continue to explore options as we go forward. You know, part of that is we're not in the business of building up a big, you know, cash balance that we can invest. That's not what we're structured to do. But there could be options in the future, and we'll continue to explore those. So I and Samantha would be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we would request your approval of the quarterly and the year-to-date financial reports.
I do have a question. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing. So is it correct to say that we were over budget? I mean, for expenses though?
Revolving expenses, yes, mostly because of that Susie, Seuss. I always say that wrong. The Seuss bill that came in that was completely unexpected during that last half of the year, quarter of the year, I suppose. I don't believe that expenses were over what we had budgeted.
Well, I guess I'm just looking at the budgeted income and expense report that I have that was revised in November. And it looks like the proposed or the amended was 172,9064. This is 1747, so like 17,000.
We did move the DB2 and the AccuSoft back to the budgeted expenses
From reserve.
from reserve.
Okay, you did say that.
So you're looking at the budget,
Yes.
right? Okay.
We also did have Light Edge Solutions, so we've been having issues with their billing for about 8 months. So in August, they actually sent us a credit bill for a little over $3,000, but it really was supposed to be the normal contracted bill for 7,900. We did get that figured out very late December. So that extra 7,900, well, it'd actually be 10,000, I'm sorry. To make up for that credit, they actually gave us a 3 when it should have been 8. So 10, 11,000 would have been in that last month of December.
Anne has tried to speak and she was asking if we could hear her.
Is Anne muted?
I don't see her on here. Oh, I do see her.
Okay.
I'm not able to oh, right, there she goes.
So I need to be unmuted on the screen in order to talk through the phone.
And could you repeat that, please?
Is there any other questions or comments on this topic?
I don't understand her.
You still want her to call in?
She's dialed into Zoom. Right, Anne?
And I can hear you through my phone and through my computer.
Better now. We can hear you.
Okay, now.
Are there any questions or comments on the financial report that's presented? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve these reports?
So moved. I'll second.
And the names of those who are motioning, please. Motion by
Motion by Travis,
Got it. Thank
second
you.
by Dylan.
and the second by,
Dylan.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any other comments or concerns prior to that? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We need to go back to the banking resolution.
Lisa's asking me if we need to go back to the banking resolution, and that's not an action item. We just wanted to let you know that, that's just something that we do every year after the new officers are elected. And so, we'll make that necessary change with Bankers Trust. But no action is required. So the next item that I would suggest,
Vote.
yeah, go ahead.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We can now move on to the next item, CY 2025 budget amendment.
Or to just use one, either the phone or the laptop, because I think she might be using two, that's why the voice is coming up.
Anne, can you shut off the audio on your computer and only use your phone?
I can only be heard if I leave both on. If I
Oh,
mute,
that's really good.
Stand by and we're trying to try a different audio option for you.
Come to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
And try talking now, please.
talking to my phone.
Okay. Everybody can hear? Okay.
Where were we?
Budget amendment.
So on page 20 of your packet is a memo, both pages 20 and 21, relating to a proposed budget amendment. This has been discussed with the ESS Finance Subcommittee, and we do have one addition that has been made after the Finance Subcommittee met. We have communicated with the Finance Subcommittee, so they're aware of this, and I'll just step through the main points, which you can see in the budget, in the bulleted points on the memo. Basically, it relates to the proposal to move developer Nancy Agrawal back from a part-time position to a full-time position. You may recall that Nancy has been a longtime member of our development team, a very valued member, but she also was a mother. And she did take a leave of absence for a short time to have a new child. And then when she was ready, she did not want to return to full-time immediately, so we converted her position to a part-time position. So that has been done for the last year or so. And Nancy is now ready to move back to full-time, and we'd very much like to have that happen. But we also have to make it work in the budget. The cost of moving her back to full-time position is roughly in the range of $29,000 to $32,000. The expense of that is not trivial, and in order to make room for it, we need to make some other budget adjustments. The main adjustments that we're recommending is to, as we did last year, to move the expenses associated with a PRISM or ActiveSoft license and a GD2 license off budget to the reserve accounts. And what happened last year is, as we talked about when Samantha was reviewing the financial reports, we worked on the budget, we tried to control expenses through the course of the year. We also had the good fortune of having some income higher than projected. And so at the end of the year, one of the things that we did is that we moved the ActiveSoft expense and the DB2 expense from the reserve account and back into the budget because we had the resources to do that. And I don't want to be unrealistically optimistic, but that seems like a reasonable strategy to take. If we don't do something like that, we're literally going to have to make cuts elsewhere, or we're not going to be able to move her back into a full-time position. So this is the solution that we're recommending to kind of repeat what we did last year with these two expense items, and then to work toward being in a position to move these things back into the budget as we proceed through the calendar year. But at least we have the expense covered, and we have a plan for doing that. Then the other issue related to the budget, which has been added, is that, as I was describing to you previously in the earlier discussion of the financial reports, we have placed an order with Oregon for a backup firewall. And it was a signed order, and we did order it, but it was delayed and delayed and delayed, and it just didn't happen. And that's why we had to decide we're moving to the cloud now, we're not going to wait. So in the meantime, Oregon still thinks that we have this active order in, and they want us to pay for it. And it's been a discussion with them for multiple months. I initially refused to pay the invoice, and my position was with them that you never delivered the service, and you didn't deliver the service timely, and they just simply wouldn't let it go. And the reason was that they viewed the fact that we did place an order, and they did pay Cisco to provide the service, and from their point of view, it was a hard expense. But what do you do with that? We've had a good business relationship with Oregon for many years. They provided, generally speaking, good service, except in this case. And, it's not something that we want to go into litigation over. It's not something that we want to have them turn over to a debt collector. We wanted to find a reasonable compromise. So the compromise that they offered was that would we be willing to pay the hard cost, even though we didn't receive the service, and then they would waive the other service expenses associated with their operation. And so agreed to do that, and we actually have implemented it, so that this is an administrative action that I took, but it's something that needs to be changed in the budget to reflect that. So that is the addendum, and hopefully we won't have this issue with them again. And I would just say, as a side note, that we are very satisfied with our move to the cloud, other than the billing department issues, because Light Edge just doesn't seem to be able to get their invoices right. But we're saying on top of that, that the service itself has been very, very good. And we're very happy that we made that move. We've avoided capital expenses by doing this instead of purchasing. That's one thing we would be doing right now, is looking at an $80,000 to $100,000 purchase of equipment, because the equipment that we have would be in a position of being better. So instead of that, we have a known budgeted amount that we're paying for the cloud services. So we do feel good about the move, but this is one of those things that happened during the transition that we need to get resolved.
So, did you say how much that was?
It was, the original bill was, I have it in my desk, it was about $1,000, and instead of being that, it's going to end up being about $750, is what we've agreed to.
Okay.
Yeah. So the two actions that are before you related to the budget are to generally make this adjustment so that we can move Nancy back to a full-time position, and the other one is just to authorize us to make the necessary change in the budget to address this compromise, if you will, with Orion.
Any other questions? So there be for the calendar year 2025 budget amendment?
Are you actually underwater, Ann?
In telephone.
So, Ann, are you asking for a motion?
Yes.
So
Okay.
can I
ask a question first before I make a motion on all this?
Sure,
Maybe not
who's
really
speaking, please?
even a question. This is Jamie, sorry.
Hi.
I have some concerns about moving Mansi to full-time. Simply based on where we're at with legislation. You know, I feel like we're a little bit in limbo as to what's gonna happen. We don't really know where we're gonna be, and that, I guess, is kind of my holdback on whether or not to move her to full-time. I mean, I know she does a great work for us, but it does concern me a little bit where we're at with legislation, and, you know, real estate isn't moving like it was either. Are those things we need to be taking into consideration for this?
Okay, Jamie's question is a concern about moving Nancy to full-time, not knowing where we will be with legislation and finances. Is this still feasible? Did I say that correctly, Jamie?
That's a good summary, yeah.
Okay.
Well, my answer is it's a judgment call. You know, being down to 2.5 developers has been a challenge for us to provide the support that people want us to do. We kind of have an associated issue that is nobody's fault, but you know, Luna had, as I said, probably a medical issue that's sort of taken her out of action for a while, and Nancy's been in a position to step into that. But you know, we aren't really able to do a lot of development work right now with 2.5 people. Most of Kelly's time is dedicated to maintaining infrastructure, and the transition to a different operating system is not a trivial thing, and that's kind of where his focus has to be. And so we, you know, like recently, the last month or so, we've been down to basically 2 developers if you put everything together. And one of the things that I have heard the most complaints about over time is that we just aren't able to timely address support issues. And we certainly, since we implemented the new software for e-submission and the new admin application, we haven't really been able to do any new software development. We haven't been able to improve anything. We haven't been able to do the things that you would want us to do. And I'll just couple that with the fact that, you know, we have a part-time communications person and a part-time customer support person, and your team is stretched fairly thin. And so it's a meaningful move, and what I would say is a strategic move to get Nancy back to a full-time position, which is what she wants to do. And I want to make sure I characterize this, but okay, what's Nancy going to do if she wants a full-time position and we just say, I'm sorry, we can't do it? You know, where does that leave us? And I'm confident enough in our ability to manage the budget as we go through this year, notwithstanding the significant uncertainty in the economy, that we'll be able to figure this out before we get to the end. And I have heard at least some doubt in the voices of people who ask me about, well, you know, if you get this fee increase, do you really need 4 full-time developers? Do you really need to do that? And my answer is absolutely yes. You know, if we had a few more resources add to our development team, it would be a meaningful change that recorders and our customers would notice. I know that. And so we'll have a legislative discussion here shortly, but, you know, we'll be even lower capacity if we're not able to retain Nancy in her position. And so I guess I'm willing to take a certain degree of risk to say, let's move her back into full-time, and we have a temporary way to handle it within the budget. And as we go forward, we can see where the revenue goes, and we can see how we can manage other expenses. You know, these are the choices that we're left with. And I'm not saying they're easy choices, but this is the only solution I've got toward of really doing something painful elsewhere in the budget. And, you know, I have to say that, you know, it doesn't look like, maybe I should say it this way. You're uncertain about what the outcome of our legislation is going to be. You know, we perhaps do have some difficult choices ahead. But for a complicated applications plural, integrated with, at least today, 99 counties and a number of service providers of different types. We're dependent upon having qualified software developers to run the system, because that's what we are at our core. So, yeah, I do think this is needed. If the committee were not to approve this, then, you know, we'll have to figure out some other plan. I don't have a better plan than this right now.
Okay, from Ann in the chat, thank you for that discussion. Are there any other questions or discussion items?
So what's left in the reserve fund? Can we pull that out quick?
What do we have in the reserve? What amount?
Yes.
Let me bring back up the balance sheet. So I'm looking at that now. We have about $300,000 and change in our software development and equipment maintenance reserve. We have other reserves for we have an unrestricted reserve account which has some carryover money from previous project activity. We have a little over $58,000 in the redaction reserve, and by policy we have $100,000 restricted operating reserve, just because we got to save something no matter what happens. And then our operating account and our settlement account, at least as of the end of December, was $250,000. So the total amount of money we have in our bank account, so to speak, is $750,000 and change. It's different than that today. This is looking back at December. I'm going to just say that we have the reserve to cover it. We can't keep doing it on everything. That's because of the same thing I said before. Cash flow to us is very important, so that we have the resources to make the distributions to the counties when it is necessary. So, you know, these reserves don't mean that we just have, you know, unused capital, because these reserves make up our cash flow too. But do we have enough to cover these expenses right now so that we can achieve a larger objective? My answer to that is yes. I hope that we don't have any other surprises. Kelly is assuring me that the issue that we had with our operating system with but Samantha refers to as Susie. But that's basically our Linux operating system. You know, we've made adjustments. Kelly is moving us to a new operating system. The other software applications that we use don't have that same risk. So we feel like we're not going to have a surprise again, which is a whole different conversation. So I feel comfortable in making this move because we did it last year and we made it work. And for an important objective to have the software development capacity we need, and we need more of, it seems like a reasonable risk to take. So that's why I brought the recommendation to you. As a project manager, if you're not comfortable with it, then go back and make a new plan. Okay? Strategy's not following, I'm not saying everything's gonna blow up. It seems like a reasonable thing to do, and Nancy's ready to move back to full-time now. So I wanna say yes to that. So if there is another action item in the agenda that would officially approve that the make the offer to a full-time position, you authorize me to do that. I should mention that in previous discussions, some people on the committee have wanted to take action on the spending side before they change the budget. And if you want to do that, I'm okay with it. And if you do, then we need to skip ahead to get to the right page here. Page 48. So this is a memo referencing back to the one that we were just looking at. And what this would do is authorize me to actually take the personnel action to move Nancy into full-time position. So you can take these in whatever order you want. They're both related, the budget action and this one.
Does anyone else have other thoughts on this besides me?
That was Jamie. It was Jamie asking if there were other questions. Anne has a message in the chat. This is important. Thank you for the questions. Is there any discussion on the budget amendment? So I think what we're looking for is first approval on the staff action, and then we would go back to the budget.
Either or.
Fine.
Whatever you want to do.
Can I ask a question? If I am remembering correctly, did we discuss if it's my understanding the MOU with the Recorders Association ends June 30th? And with that, there would be a change in staff. Is that if we delay making Nancy full-time until July 1 and using some of that, is that an option?
I don't think it's related to the MOU, but the answer is yes. If we delay a little bit, okay, what does that say? Well, as I mentioned here, the difference between what we're paying Nancy right now and what it would be to have a full-time position is about $2,900. Okay, so every $2,900. Okay, and if you multiply that by 10 months, which is what's left in this year, that's where I come up with the $29,000 additional expense if we were to act right now. So I think achieving the goal of saving enough money by delay is going to be if we do that, it's going to be more than a short delay. And we've already accounted for the savings in the MOU changes in the 2025 budget. That is already baked in. So that change is not going to help us. So.
I would just add, this is Stacy from since I'm on the finance committee, that we look at this every month when we review the finances, and Samantha, you can talk too, that we ask questions, and that's something that we look at budgeted and actual, that just know that we're looking at that as well. So each month, so that 291450 increase, that's, we would see the statements and talk about that every single month too. It's not that we wait until, every 6 months to review it. So that, if that helps you on the committee, on the ESS committee, helps you a little bit with some of your questions, I just wanted to add that.
I hesitate to do this because I'm not one to, I'm not a Pollyanna about the economy and our budget, because I'm no financial wizard, but what's happening in the world is unsettling. Let's just say it that way. And so I do not know what next month is going to look like, or the month after that. I can say that January in e-submission was a really good month. In fact, what we did in January of this year equaled the amount that we had in 2022. If you're looking at the chart, it's the yellow blotch. And you can't really tell the difference because they're that close. 2022 and January 2025, really. And it's certainly not the peak that we saw in 2021, but January was a good number. And anecdotally, I'm just going to say February so far looks okay.
Anecdotally, I'm going to say we're going to come out about even to last year, based on what I've done, reports I've generated.
So it gives me a tiny bit, just a smidgen of additional confidence that, okay, we might be able to, make this reserve adjustment now, but work toward having sufficient net income to be able to cover this expense. I don't have anything else on the radar that says, hey, we're going to spend more money on whatever. This is probably the one thing. And I would share with you that if there is another thing, I still have some people on the staff, notwithstanding the so-called bonuses that we get at the end of the year, but, there are a number of staff, including our technical lead, that hasn't had a base adjustment in more than 2 years in their compensation. And that's probably next on my list in terms of, okay, if we can figure it out, this is something that we need to do, because I don't even want to talk about what the consequences would be if we have a vacancy in that position. So, yeah, we're in a tight spot, everybody. I admit it. So this is a temporary adjustment that I hope we can manage, and I believe we can. And for those who think that the fee increase doesn't really matter, I can tell you it really matters.
There's a note from Erin Canfield. Forgive me if I shouldn't be interjecting, but have there been many instances where recorders are not receiving support in a timely manner to justify this move back to full-time? Hello. I would think that there are days that, we have to get in front of Kelly to get help, and maybe it could be quicker if there's a third person on staff. We try to protect Kelly's time as much as possible so he can finish the move that he's working on. Nancy certainly has been helpful. Myrna helps as she can. We've had a lot of testing going on with the move to the new API. That's pretty much taking all of Myrna's time. And next she'll be working on the upload API, I believe. So, there are firms that change their name. So Denise Baker, as an example, if you and Travis, you were Baker Law and you went into business with Travis, so now it's going to be Baker Case, but you want to keep your same e-submission account. That requires somebody from our IT team, your development team, to make that change electronically for us. We can't do it. If a document gets stuck in the submission process, that takes time. And it's not just recorders, but sometimes it's a submitter that needs help with a document that it just doesn't go through the submission process well. Kelly and I spent a lot of time on one last week with a submitter who had a 160-page document that needed to be recorded in 10 counties. And I bet between the two of us, we spent 4 to 6 hours trying to get that done. So, and that's time that took Kelly away from other things, so.
My answer to Erin is that the way I would describe it to anybody externally is that every day is a new adventure here. There's some new issue that comes up, there's some technical issue, or there's something where there is a squeaky wheel. There is no day off in what we do. And I can say from direct observation that our team, which is, Corey and Lisa and 2.5 developers, I think they're staying on top of things better than we should really expect them to. But there are times when, stuff just has to wait. And I would say over the last several years, we hear complaints that when we're not able to provide support in a sufficiently timely way. And sometimes that is true. That's not what we want to do. So that's a fair question. I do want to say that we need to, I want to encourage us to wrap up this part because I think Bob Rafferty should be online that we can begin to get the legislative update. So, not seeing his name, but.
He was on. Yeah, he's here.
Bill, I'm on.
Okay.
Yes,
So,
and I apologize. I do have, I have a 11:30, so I'll have to, but I can cover, I think things in 10 minutes.
Would you like to pause on this issue and then maybe move to that while Bob is available? Okay. So Bob, you're going to give us obviously a short legislative update and.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, ESS and Phil and the team have spent, and the recorders have spent a considerable amount of time over the past year developing our modernization legislation. That is obviously closely connected with having a base fee increase for the first time since the 1980s. And that legislation was introduced, I think it was actually yesterday, Senate File 371 by Senator Clemish. So there is a specific bill. Now the discussion of that bill has spurred a lot of other discussion around the Capitol in regards to Iowa land records and recording and fees. So there's actually 3 different approaches that have been introduced with 3 separate bills or are being proposed to be introduced. The one bill is not yet introduced. One bill didn't include modernization, but just increased the fees. A second bill, which has not been introduced but is being discussed, would do the modernization without increasing the base fee. And then the third approach that has been introduced by Representative Nordman, Dallas County, and Representative Moore from Scott County, is to allow counties to go their own way on e-submission and possibly the system. They've introduced a bill that they understand isn't really doing what they want. They're still working on an amendment. They want to have conversations with us, and we've been having conversations. So those are the three things that are sort of out there. In regards to our legislation on the modernization and the base fee increase, that seems pretty clear that the cards aren't there for that full package this year. I mean, I guess you never say never. Well, sometimes you do, but obviously there's it's still possible something were to happen, but it's looking more and more unlikely. And there's three challenges. The first challenge is just the fact that anytime you have a fee increase, especially you come out and proposing a quote unquote doubling of the fee, even if it's not an actual doubling in the end. Legislators, particularly the Republican legislators, that's just a wall you have to initially overcome. And obviously a lot of the recorders have spent a considerable amount of time over the fall meeting with their legislators and have done great work. So that resistance is not as strong as it otherwise would have been, but it's still there among some key legislators, mainly the chairs of local government in both the Senate and the House. Second, while there's been great work done with the stakeholders, the key stakeholders, and in fact, those key stakeholders have not indicated that they plan to be opposed to the legislation. At the same time, for a fee increase to happen, it's very hard to get that done without their actual support. And so that's out there. And then three, this issue that there isn't total unanimity among the recorders on how to go forward, even though it's I think there's widespread support for that. It's not 100% support, and so that has added this issue of, wait a minute, should counties be able to go on their own path? So that is sort of where things are at. And Phil or Census, do you want to add anything else in regards to the topic? Or I see Megan's on the phone. I don't know if Stacy is.
Yeah, I'm here too, Bob. I think you summed it up very well. This is Stacy. That having our bill introduced, at least it goes with Senate File 371, and that is the recorder Iowa Land Records fee proposal that we all agreed to at our summer school meeting to move forward. Having that of record, I think, is very important. We have a lot of thanks to Senator Clemash for doing that, I think. And I don't really have anything else to add.
I might add, yeah, I am really, a year ago or 2 years ago, if you said, gosh, we would be in the position where the stakeholders are not opposing a doubling of the fee, of the base fee, and that there'd be a number of Republican legislators that indicated an openness and to support that, I would have say, well, I guess that's possible, but boy, that's more unlikely than likely. And so we've made a lot of progress, and a bill like this often takes a couple of years for people to sort of digest, get comfortable to, and react. So if in fact it takes more than one session, that would be more normal than not normal for a change of this magnitude.
Thank you, Bob.
Happy to answer any more questions.
Before you go, I do think that it would be helpful for you to just kind of describe sort of the conversations that have been held around, House Bill 328, in terms of, you know, where that conversation may be going. I think kind of what you said or what you said is that, you know, we haven't absolutely said no way, no how. It's been more than the conversation going. How would you describe that at this moment?
Yeah, well, I think you just described it well, that we've been open to having conversations. The recorders also kind of separately amongst themselves with the recorder who's really leading the charge on that, to try to build bridges. I think it's important to build bridges. The sponsors of that, Carter Nordman and Representative Moore, he's the chair of appropriations. And Carter Nordman, very respected in his caucus, hard worker. And I think it's important for us to ensure we go about listening to the concerns there, continuing to kind of work with them. At the same time, I think they're learning that the stakeholder community would get, I guess I'll to say it mildly, would be very concerned about losing a consistent statewide approach. And so I don't know, Phil, you know, I think what we need to do is make sure we try to use this process to build bridges to make it easier for us to move forward, whether it's later this session or next year, on important legislation. I'm trying to be diplomatic, Phil, so, but I do believe that we really need to use this process to build bridges. Otherwise, I think it's just in our best interest. Phil, did you want to add any more? And I apologize, I'm going to have to jump off real quick. It's just that time of session wherever.
Thank you, Bob. I apologize here for delaying getting you in, and you know, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in terms of the recorders as a whole, and also from the perspective of ESS as an organization, that we really do believe in the value of having a statewide system and promoting standards and consistency, you know, across the 99 counties. But we also just have to acknowledge that not everybody agrees with that. And so we have to work through that, and you know, the stakeholders have to have a say in this too. So building those bridges and having that conversation is kind of where things seem to be at this moment in time. So thank you, Bob.
Great. Hey, thanks.
Okay. All right. And I would just say that we can come back to this as we go deeper into the agenda, but it was important to get Bob's perspective. Nick could not be here because of a conflict, but he's very much a part of the discussion as well. So if you desire or are ready, we can go back to the budget and the personnel discussion. And I would just make a note. I saw a comment from Erin, and I would just say, Erin, happy to have your comment there, but she did add that she had not heard a lot of complaints about the team not providing support, so she wanted to share that as well. And so, and in the chat pod, it's saying, okay, back to the budget amendment, and if not, is there a motion one way or the other? And I would then say you can start with the employment authorization, or you can go to the budget authorization, whichever you prefer.
I make a motion to approve the calendar year 2025 budget amendment.
I'll second.
So Ann, there's a motion and a second.
Any further discussion?
I'm sorry, what?
She said any further discussion in the chat?
Okay, it does not appear there's any further discussion.
Aye.
And the chat pod has asked for a vote. All those in favor say aye, she says.
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed?
Okay.
And then, it's your choice, we can proceed with the regular agenda and get back to the personnel issue, in due order. And if you are ready, I am ready to, talk about the, cost sharing credits.
She said yes, please.
Okay, so in your packet of materials, I'm looking at beginning on page 23 of your packet. One of the things that is a part of our process is that we assign certain credit amounts to counties for the maintenance expenses based on their participation in the submission activity. So as a part of your regular budget process, you, in November, you approved the budget for 2025, and as a part of that, you budgeted a certain amount for the cost sharing program. And so based on that, we say, okay, how do we determine the allocation of the cost sharing credits? And basically what this means is that, you know, in the springtime, when we're ready to renew the service agreements with the local service providers, we do this calculation and then we prepare to issue invoices to each county based on the agreed to agreement with each service provider, which basically is a per county amount that's determined by the contracts that we have with them. And then the credit amount is the amount that's deducted from that invoice to sort of acknowledge and, in a way, reward those counties that do a lot to promote e-submission. So what we do is we take the budgeted amount and then we divide it by 99, and that's the base amount. And then if a county has a higher than average e-submission rate, they get a little bit more. And if the county is below the statewide average in e-submission rate, they get a little bit less of a credit, okay? And that's just all done by a formula. So the first chart that you see is the e-submission ratio table by county. So it's in alphabetical order. And you can look at that, but you can see that in calendar year 2024, the proportion of e-submission documents, that is, the documents that were electronically submitted and recorded, increased this year. In 2023, it was 62%. in 2024, it increased to 67%, which is a trend that we obviously are working toward to encourage more and more people to do e-submission. If you look at the next item, we sort this report based on descending order of who had the highest proportion of e-submission in 2024. And this year, number one was Buchanan County. And in 2024, they had 83% of their documents were electronically recorded. And amazingly, Story County comes in at number two at 82.8%. And a county that has been in the top tier for a number of years. Potawatomi County came in third this year. And then you can read the rest of the results for yourself. But statewide, the proportion of e-submission was 67.2%. So basically what happens is we put that into the formula, and as I said, you kind of calculate what the budgeted amount is divided by 99. That's your base sum. You either add or subtract from that. And then the formula is not a perfect distributor because, you might have some that are more and some that are less, and the formula ends up maybe not using the entire amount budgeted. So we do want to use the money for the credits. So the custom has been in recent years to just add an arbitrary flat dollar amount to each county's credit so that everybody's sort of benefiting equally. And so the amount budgeted this year was $120,000. That's the amount that we budgeted. And based on that, you could take the formula amount and then add $95 to it. And then we almost used all of the budgeted amount. It ends up being $119,629.47. So what we're asking you to do today is to give preliminary approval of the assignment of credits. However, with the understanding that before we issue invoices in May, when your next meeting is, we'll take another look at it to see where the budget is. We actually ended up adding money to the budget in a budget amendment last May so that we could increase the credit amount. I'm not making any promises in that regard this year, but we will have time to do that. So this is sort of the baseline. We're definitely going to do this, and then maybe if the revenue comes in, maybe we can allocate a little bit more to it, and we can look at that in May. What we did last year, we propose to do the same thing. So the action we're requesting is simply for you to give preliminary approval to the assignment of credits for this calendar year. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I don't have any questions. This is Jolene. I'll make a motion that we approve it.
This is Jamie. I'll second it.
Our scribes have the people who made the motion and second. Okay? Thank you.
And Anne is asking for discussion.
Aaron has asked a question that doesn't take into account the service providers that don't accept this fee. Let me answer that question before everybody votes. Thank you, Ann. We had one service provider who declined to accept the fee in certain instances last year where they actually had not started service at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we said, well, don't necessarily feel comfortable in paying you for the full year since you haven't actually started services to that new county that you require. So we propose to pay them on a allocated basis whenever their service started. And so sort of prorated if they started service, say, in August, then we would kind of divide by 12 and then multiply by the number of months left in the year. And we offered that more than once to the service provider. And for reasons that I cannot explain, they declined to accept it. And so when Samantha was talking about how we issued refunds to some counties, we did, and that was the reason. And if you're curious, it's Fiddler that did that. Unless there is a new county that they acquire after the beginning of the next fiscal year, our intent would be to do the same thing and offer to pay a prorated rate for anybody that they were starting after the first quarter or whatever it ended up being. And it's up to them to decide whether or not they want to accept that or not. But I'm assuming that since the counties that came on board with them last year now are fully on board, that they would be willing to accept payment for the full year. Otherwise, I can't explain why they did what they did, but they did. So that's the explanation. So our hope is that every service provider will accept the payments that they are due because we do appreciate their services. So now Ann has asked for a vote for preliminary approval of the class credits.
I thought we
Aye.
had that. Okay,
I don't think it was actually.
okay.
I think, okay, she has now asked if anyone opposed. Okay, and she has indicated in the chat pod that the motion has been approved. So moving back to the packet, we're now, if you're ready, Ann, we've already talked about the metrics with the chart that I showed. We're now in the section on contracts and agreements, and the first item is the audit engagement. May I proceed with that, Ann? Ann is asking, the same.
Yeah.
Sorry, I won't repeat that then. Okay, so I would just say that we have used Zenman for a number of years to perform our audit. We've already started to communicate with them about preparations for the audit of the 2024 calendar year, and then associated with that also the preparation of the 990 return for the Alabama Disabilities Association, because they're still affected by their previous relationship with the ESS that has now changed. So, we're going to cover the cost of the preparation of that return. But in this case, we're seeking your approval of retaining those services to conduct the audit for calendar year 2024. I'll see if I can find it here. The cost is going up. So if you look on page 35, the total cost of the audit would increase to $10,000. And then the fee associated with the preparation of the Reporters Association 990 return is $2,100. So $12,100. And we had a great professional relationship with Robert Endress and the Denman team. And we do recommend that we continue working with them for this year. And I would request your approval. Ann has asked it in the chat pod if there is a motion and a second.
This is Julie Haggerty. I move to approve the Denman audit agreement. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, to continue there. What am I doing?
The Denman agreement,
Okay,
yes, you're right.
You had it right. Sorry, I was a little late, I'm sorry.
I have a second.
And has asked for further discussion. And now I'm asking for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
She's asking anyone opposed. Okay, she's declared the motion to be approved. Thank you, Ann. The next items are associated with the local service provider to take a moment and talk about that, and then answer any questions you may have. So, beginning on page 40 is an amendment that was offered to Fiddler last year. It was very similar to the amendments that were offered to the other service providers, with the exception that we had previously agreed in the prior year to have a separate section on APIs with deliverables that outlined the timeline for the completion of the integration with the new API, specifically the e-submission API and the county upload API. So as we were doing with other service providers, we were offering basically an extension of the deadline for completing integration with those two things, and you can find those proposed extensions on item 1. I'm looking at page 40, and if you look at item 1, you can see where the deadline was extended from September 30, 2023 to July 31st, 2024, and the county upload API from September 30, 2024 to June 30, 2025. I would say it's a normal course of things for us to kind of put deadlines into our agreements with the local service providers to say, hey, we want to get this done. On the other hand, we have a history of, okay, we're not going to meet that deadline, and then offering exceptions, and this is an example of that. What didn't happen last year is that Fiddler was the only organization that declined to accept the amendment. And I cannot fully explain the reasons why, but our communication with them in the last year has not been that great. Kind of related to the declining the payments for maintenance for those counties, and then even their management has declined to have meetings with me throughout the year. And I'm not going to say anything negative, except to say that it feels very passive aggressive. And I don't understand why they're behaving that way. And when offered to have communications with them, they simply are declining to me. That causes one pause, because the way our agreements are structured right now is that if nothing changes, they automatically renew. And we have had automatic renewals in the agreements for a number of years as a gesture of goodwill, that kind of recognizing mutual dependence, to make everything work. And so we can't really feel comfortable being in a position where a service provider refuses to talk to us, and we don't feel comfortable being in a position where the service provider declines to engage in a discussion and approve a contract amendment. Okay? I do not wish to be punitive, and I'm not proposing to be punitive, but I am proposing some changes in the template that we use in setting up agreements with the service providers. So one of the main changes is that we would no longer have automatic renewals. That we would change the agreements for not just Fiddler, but for all service providers to one where there has to be mutual agreement to continue, and to specify the term of the agreement in the agreement. Secondly, if you look at page 43, item number 2, we're actually proposing to do two things. One of them is to transition from a fiscal year beginning July 1 to a calendar year. That would begin on January 1. And so there are two extensions built into this template. One is to extend 6 months to the end of calendar year 2025, and then to go ahead and enter into another full year of the calendar year 2026. So that, the effect of that is that it actually is going to end up giving them an increase in compensation earlier than they otherwise would have for calendar year 2026. By the time we get to October, when the Social Security Administration issues their COLA announcement, there's no reason we can't apply that beginning January 1. So in my mind, this is a bit of a budget benefit to the service providers to make this change, which we're not object to. But you'll see in that very bottom line that it's no longer an automatic extension. It's subject to mutual agreement of the parties. Then I also need to point out, and this is at the top of page 44, that the standard agreement will have a new clause in it, and current circumstances compel me to recommend this at this time, and that is that, if the rug were to be pulled out from under us, say the legislature approved the bill that said, you don't exist anymore, we really don't have anything in the current agreement that says, sorry, we're dead, and so it seems prudent to include a provision in the agreement, which is very common in state contracts, to just say, hey, if if the legislature says we can't do that anymore, then this we're going to terminate this contract. So I don't mean to predict that, but I think it's prudent to have a provision like that in the agreement going forward. Then the other thing that we're doing is that, again, we have to acknowledge that and we're a little bit behind schedule. Maybe that's an understatement in terms of preparing for the county upload API. There's not any service provider that is done with the county upload API. Several service providers have achieved completion of integration with the resubmission API. Solutions has, for example, COT has. We have a couple of the smaller service providers that are working on it. Fiddler is partially complete with it because they asked for permission to continue to use their stamping process while they completed some other technical development work. And, you know, that is being moved into production, so that part of it is complete. But we had taken the position, which Fiddler had agreed to in the prior agreements, to convert to the use of the Iowa Land Records e-submission stamp so that we could have consistency in how those things looked and were structured across all 99 counties. So we viewed their stamping issue as sort of a temporary thing while we did that. Well, what we're proposing here is to give them even more time to complete the transition to both APIs, extending it to March 31st, 2026, which we're also proposing for all the other service providers. Most of the other service providers will be fully done with the e-submission API by June 30th of this year. I do not believe that those will be ready to do that. And just out of goodwill, I'm saying, okay, let's just give them until March 31st, not only on the county upload API, but also on the e-submission API, or the remaining portions of it. For the other service providers who didn't have that exception for the stamp, we're just simply proposing that not really change the deadline for the submission API because they're supposed to be done. Most of them will be. But we are extending that kind of upload API to March of 2026. That gives everybody, you know, a full year to work on that and get it done. So, so if you look at what I'm showing you here, this is what the proposed Fiddler agreement would look like. And so the other part of this is that we would make similar template agreement changes for the other service providers as well. And in their cases, they would also see more automatic renewal. They would see a year-and-a-half extension. They would see an accelerated receipt of the cooler increase. And then their deadlines for the county upload API would also be changed to March 31st. It has been our practice to bring the template amendments to the ESS committee in advance so that you can see what we're doing and to provide any comment that you may have to us about the changes. Then, in conjunction with this, I just need to point out, I'm looking at page 47 right now, and I'm showing this to you because there had been some discussion between us and Tyler Technologies about integrating redaction services into the master agreement. And the reason we consider that is because Tyler Technologies acquired our redaction service provider, CSI, and so we've had a discussion with Tyler management about that, about do we want to do that? Do we want to do it now? Maybe we want to keep it separate for another year and then see how things go. And that's sort of where I have settled. And that is, recommendation would be to simply extend the CSI agreement as we know it today, understanding it's going to be a Tyler person that signs off on it. Give us another year to see how things are going. You know, we have had on the agenda the idea of maybe we go back to internalizing our redaction services. If we can figure out a way to do that, we could actually maybe save some money in our budget. That's a $7,000 a month expense to do what we do it today. I'm going to say, given what we experienced previously with DII, totally worth it. But on the other hand, things have changed, technology's changed. Maybe that is something that we could reasonably internalize, because I'm much more confident about how we're handling documents and security now compared to the way we did things back in 2009. So the proposal in this case would be just simply to extend the Tyler agreement. I'm sorry, the CSI agreement for redaction services. Then the last thing I need to talk to you about, and then maybe we can break for lunch, is what happens if a service provider declines to approve the amendments that were happening, that were often. I hope that doesn't happen. That's not our objective. And that's why I'm trying to be a little bit more generous in terms of offering the accelerated increase because of the calendar year change, and kind of being just more open to, let's push it all back a year, give everybody more time, because it's important that we really have a business relationship. We need a written agreement with the service provider. And if they balk, I can't recommend that we let the current contract provisions stay in effect. That is, I cannot recommend that we just say, well, if they refuse to participate, if they refuse to communicate, they refuse to accept the contract amendment that is being offered, which I'm going to be clear that if they came back to me and said, hey, can we tweak this, can we tweak that, we're open to that discussion. But if they just refuse, we can't just let the contract automatically renew with no changes. We just can't do that. It's just not good business to do that. And so what would happen likely is that when we get to the end of March, if we don't have a clear indication that any of the service providers are going to enter into the amendment, then the prudent action would be to give notice to them that we're not going to renew. Because the current agreement says we cannot renew with 90 days notice. Now, does that mean that we absolutely would not renew? No. What it means is that we'd have another 3 months to work on it until we've just given them notice that we're not renewing, and have that 3-month period to continue to work with them and say, we really need to come to terms on this, and here it is. And then the hope would be that we'll be able to reach mutual agreement, and then move forward. In the majority of cases, I'm confident that this is a no-brainer. I'm not 100% confident about how the other service provider will react, but it's untenable to just say, I just choose to ignore you and let the agreement automatically renew, because especially if we might need making some technical changes to the agreement, our service providers need to pay attention to it, and they need to follow the agreement that they're going to enter. So I'm trying to fully inform you of what the potential options are, and I hope that I'm demonstrating to you that we're not doing anything onerous here. We're not penalizing anybody. There's no negative of what we're doing. We're basically saying, here's your increase, here's a 1.5-year contract extension, and, oh, by the way, we want to, make it, for a full 1.5 years, and here's your COLA. That's really what it says. Because we aren't really making any technical changes beyond what's already in the agreement with them this time. I'll stop talking.
Let me ask a question, this is Stacy. So, okay, we have the e-submission API and the county upload API. So we have the service providers under each of those two APIs. Can you kind of go through what service providers for the upload have it done? I have a short list. You said COT is done, Solutions is done for the e-submission API.
Right.
Fiddler is partially done, except for the stamp,
Yeah.
right? And then Tyler is not. We know Tyler is.
Well, we've been in communications with Tyler.
Right.
Okay, and, I'm confident that we're gonna be able to get there.
And like DevNet.
We, you know, had discussions with Julie, in particular, in her management team. And, you know, she's been very positive about bringing on additional support staff that, will allow them to get this completed. So I don't have any qualms.
Oh, no, that's right. And I think it's just important for the recorders to know, you know, if your service provider is holding up to their end of the agreement or not. And I think as recorders, it's good to know that, hey, you know, some of our frustration as users with our service provider, we are also feeling on the other side of trying to get them to, you know, live up to the agreement and do their APIs that they're supposed to be doing. And we keep extending the contract. I'm like, when do you say, put some teeth in it and say, enough is enough, we're not gonna pay you? Similar to if you had a project in your own business and you don't feel like they've done a good job, you don't pay them. So I think putting some meat into the agreements with all of our service providers is important. I just wondered with the county upload, could you kind of go through each one, kind of like you did with the eSub API, of who is kind of on board or mind?
Well,
I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but.
You know, the API integrations are not trivial things.
Right.
And part of the motivation of the API is to improve the functionality between the local system and Iowa Land Records. It needs to be done because we need to move off of the SOAP API and into the REST API, you know, for just staying up with technical standards. There are some changes from the use of XML to JSON that actually will be beneficial to everybody. Make it really simpler than the XML schema. And with regard to the county upload API, it's going to have additional functionality that we don't have today. It's going to be better able to handle large documents, for example. And the other thing that we've talked about before, but you know, haven't implemented yet, but it's coming, is the idea of saying, hey, we can't continue to be vulnerable to having our data wiped out by an unintentional thing. So we're kind of saying, okay, we'll keep the window open for updates for 30 days after reporting, and then after that, we got to talk to each other. And we're not saying no, we just have to work together to do that. So there are a lot of things that are a part of this. And you know, we've tried to be very patient for two reasons. One is, I only have less than 3 developers to work on all of this. And the other is that, you know, service providers have other issues that they have to deal with too. And we have to be understanding of that. And in spite of any rumors you may have heard, I really try not to be a dictator with everybody. And so we you know, sometimes just need to acknowledge reality and say, okay, this is gonna take longer than it is. I don't mean to confuse the issue, but I need to also add in that there are some that just are really challenged. So, you know, the economics for Avenue, for example, it's sure living in one county in Iowa. You know, they're really trying hard, but they're sort of in that, you know, wow, we go way beyond an ROI, you know, in terms of how much development time. And Debnet in Marshall County is sort of in the same situation. So, you know, I would anticipate that we're going to have some conversation with them about helping them out in their unique circumstances, both from a schedule perspective and maybe financially. We haven't completed those discussions yet, but they're underway. So I think generally speaking, you know, we're having the conversations and cooperatively working with the service providers that is appropriate.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
So this is Jamie, kind of jumping off on what Stacy was talking about. Is there a potential to kind of gather, I don't know, 4 or 5 of the counties that we need to have these discussions with to get their service providers on board and kind of bridge that gap between Iowa Land Records, the recorders, and their service providers? Can we kind of get everybody like in a meeting together to discuss that?
Well, we're appropriate. I think we're trying to have conversations with recorders so they kind of know what the situations are. You know, in most cases, that's not necessary, but an example I would give you is yesterday, Lisa and I had a conference call with Keisha in Ringgold County, and just checking in to see, okay, you know, how are you feeling? How committed are you to stay with Avenue? You know, do you feel like it's a long-term commitment? And, you know, her basic answer was, I really want to stay with Avenue, and I don't want them to dump me. Okay, that was kind of where she was coming from. Did I say that right, Lisa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's, you know, we're like, okay, you only serve one county, and she's thinking, they only serve me, will they keep me, you know?
Yeah. And so,
Happy with them, so,
you know,
I mean,
I'm really happy with them.
So, you know, the way we left it is that, you know, I told her we were having these conversations with management at Avenue, and we were trying to work something out, and we certainly don't want to do anything that would jeopardize her ability to stay with them. And we're willing to work with them. Hopefully we can reach an agreement on something, but that's in process, and I would expect us to have, we sort of opened the door to have the conversation that hasn't occurred yet with them, that in Marshall County. And the rest of the service providers, you know, sort of, you know, do have multiple counties that they serve, and, you know, we want to work with them as well, and we are where we can. In one case that I mentioned where, you know, the desire to communicate with me is limited at the present time.
I just think, piggybacking on what Jamie said too, is that maybe there's a way to help bridge that gap, and maybe, you know, like Travis is an early adopter for Tyler. You know, maybe he's in on a call with the service provider, or like, I don't know, Miranda and Andrew are early adopters for Fiddler, so maybe they could be, you know, in on some of that, that maybe having a knowledge of that, then there's a way that, you know, we as recorders can also say, hey, how are you coming on this? You know, we have this, you know, I don't know, just kind of to help that, bridge that a little bit, so.
I think we're interested in that. At the same time, you know, not trying to, you know, be heavy-handed with them. I'm trying to be cooperative with everybody, and that's where we want to, I think that's where we want to be. And got a poster just saying, are there any other questions or comments?
I have a couple. Say that they did agree with the auto renewal, but then they just don't or they agree with undoing the auto renewal in a set term, what happens if they don't, or if they call the bluff, and don't respond to the notice of
Well,
termination?
at a minimum, what we would say is that, you know, we really are ending the agreement. Okay, that's the obvious thing, because if you give notice and then they don't respond to you, then.
Right, but what are the implications to the counties and the land records if business pulls out?
Well, I, you know, I guess at a minimum, you know, we're saying to them, we're not going to pay you, okay? So that is on the service provider. And, how far we take it, I don't know. We could leave this connection open and they could still continue to serve, but we're just not paying them if they're willing to do it. But it might mean that there really is a disruption in service too. And then if it really got carried to its logical conclusion, which obviously we don't want that to happen.
Are there particular unfavorable terms in the current contract that we don't want to auto renew?
Not that I can think of. I can just tell you, you don't have to believe me, but, you know, we beg the service providers to say, hey, you want to make a change here or there or whatever. You know, I would say there's a pretty good consensus among the service providers that what we're asking of them is reasonable. You know, it sort of fits into the mold of, you have to have something in writing that says, here's what our mutual responsibilities are, here's how we're going to work together, and I'll send you a draft of the full agreement so you can take a look at it. But I don't think there's anything onerous in there, and I think our history shows that if somebody wanted to consider a change in the master agreement, but it's usually done is to say, oh, that sounds reasonable. We'll make that change not just for you. We'll send that change to everybody, to every service provider. That's what our history is. So I would do the same thing. Now, part of the service agreements also refer to our API, and so we're basically saying you have to conform to the API. I know maybe some people would say, well, you can't make rules or policies and procedures, but if you're going to run a system, you have to write certain ground rules about here's the data we want, here's this part of the schema we want you to send it to, here's the format that has to be. Those are the kinds of things that are in the schema that we publish for each of the APIs. And, you know, technical organizations are used to dealing with that. There's nothing new about that. So I'll send you a copy. So.
That'd be great. I'm just really a little concerned about sending notices of termination if they're currently working. That would just be my concern. Will this board get to know before the notices go out and have a need to object?
Well, if that is your desire, yes. So the next steps are to I am asking you for approval of the templates. So the next step will be to issue the templates to the service providers, all of them. And then we'll see what they say. And it would be my intention to give them a deadline of March 31st to respond. And if they don't respond, then I think the next step is going to be then we issue a notice of intent not to renew, just to not let the agreements automatically renew the way the current agreement is written. Not to say we want them to not renew. It just means that we have a quarter from April 1st through June 30th to keep working on it, and hopefully we can resolve whatever the issue was. So I can definitely commit to you that when we got to near the end of March, I can provide the committee with an update on who's in and who's not completed the work yet. So you're advised of the steps along the way. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
So the action on the table for Ann is, I would request your approval of the templates that I have shared with you, with the supervisions to, modify the term, to provide the benefit of the earlier, second round, increase in compensation, to add the provision on if something bad happens or the legislature does something that affects our ability to operate, that we'd be able to negate the contract. And then really the only other thing in the template is to extend the template for including integration with those two APIs.
This is Dylan. I'd make that motion, provided though that no notices of intent to terminate would be sent out without ESS approval.
This is Jamie. I'll second that motion.
Would you like to vote then, and then we can take an answer?
Aye.
And
Aye.
Aye.
she's now asking for any opposed. And she's declared the motion to carry. We do have lunch waiting for the people that are in attendance. For those who may not have done this many times before, our practice is to maybe take 15 minutes for everybody to get their lunch, and then maybe reconvene for a session afterwards. We can either do the staff appointment now, or we can wait until after lunch. Most of the rest of the agenda is informational, other than that, so it's up to you. Ann has asked if we can power through rather than break. I do think that logistically, we need to give a few minutes to the group to get their lunch, but if they're amenable, yes, we could power through. I'm thinking maybe 10 minutes to let people get their lunch and come back in, or what are the wishes of the group?
A little break would be good.
I think so too. That sounds good.
Okay. 12:35?
Okay.
All right, we are pausing.
And we're back.
Okay, Ann has written in the chat box the Zoom contest with the staff appointment. But say that goes need to, I won't repeat what I said earlier. The action is authorize us to make an offer to bring Nancy Agrawal back from a part-time position to a full-time position.
Motion.
I would make that motion.
I'd second it.
Denise?
Did you start the recording?
I did check the recording, yes.
So we have a motion from Denise.
Yes.
Second from Travis. And a second from Travis. Ann is saying she cannot hear us. We are unmuted. Anybody else hear us?
I hear you.
Did we call in with Ann?
And has asked if there's any further discussion. I haven't seen any discussion here. Anne, in her messages, has said, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This is Jamie. I'm a no.
And Anne is asked now for any opposed.
Jamie has voted no.
And now she's declared that the motion is carried. I want to thank everybody for dealing with all the action items that we brought to you today. And I know we did have a brief report from Bob Rafferty, but the intention was I think we're ready to go back to the legislative discussion. So the intention was to provide the committee with an additional opportunity to, consider what's happening, what the status of the legislation is. Looking at my agenda, I'm kind of feeding back to Anne. We dealt with the audit, we dealt with the local service provider templates. The last item was the staff appointment, and you previously acted on the budget. So I don't have anything further in that area, and the next item on the agenda is the legislative update. I guess I was looking at the memo, and so I've considered those to be both the compensation amount and the appointment would be the same. If somebody doesn't feel like that was covering both issues, then we can go back if you wish. Okay.
The appointment of compensation.
All right, Ann is now saying proceed with the legislative discussion. So I think the intent was to not just receive Bob's report, but to have any discussion that the committee wanted to have about what's covered in the legislature. I am going to go back in the chat pod. There was a comment about something that was not in legislation. And I think, if I'm interpreting it correctly, when we were talking about the templates with the local service providers, and specifically about the provisions relating to, if the legislature were to do something that adversely affected our ability to deliver services, that we would be able to essentially negate those contract agreements. I'm not sure if I said something different, but I would clarify that I was not suggesting that the current legislation would eliminate our land records. I was not suggesting that. The thinking is something could happen. We don't know what it is. We have to be prepared for that. And right now, the contract really doesn't have anything in there that we can point to and say, hey, we have to change what we're doing because of drastic changes in circumstances. And that is kind of a standard provision that's included in the state of Iowa contracts, not because they're thinking it's going to happen, but just as a matter of prudence. And I will acknowledge that the idea that if policy changes such that counties do not have to participate in Iowa land records, or if policy changes that would cause counties to leave Iowa land records, particularly participation in each submission, that absolutely could affect our revenue stream. I think it's just prudent to, again, I'm not saying the sky is falling, I'm just saying, from my experience working in state government and elsewhere, you know, upon reflection, we probably could have something in the agreement that covers us in that situation. So I'm not making any predictions, and I was not trying to imply that any pending legislation would be that drastic. It's just a prudent thing to do. That's all I'm saying. So,
Megan.
So, other than that, I don't have anything to specifically add. Megan says she has to leave for another meeting. Can I speak now for just an update? Absolutely.
Can you unmute her?
Huh?
Will you unmute her?
Hang on.
He probably wants to mute me, I'm sure.
You're unmuted. You're unmuted, Megan. You got the
Okay,
floor.
hey, really quick, I have a 1 o'clock meeting. I didn't know where we were in the agenda. I've been by myself. Really quick, so everybody yesterday, I mean, obviously the ESS board, I usually don't attend these, but I'm attending because I know some of you are not recorders that are on the ESS board. I just wanted to let you know, we sent an update yesterday to the recorders about our legislative stuff that's happened throughout the week. And then we had another thing that happened yesterday afternoon, which our bill got dropped in Senate File 371. But I just basically wanted to give an update to the ESS board that Stacy and I are going to stress to our executive board, hopefully tomorrow, if that'll all work, an immediate need for a statewide, potentially district meetings, or whether it's statewide meeting for legislative matters, and Stacy and I can call those. We want to have either the districts meet at whatever's convenient for them, because I think we need clarity on how to move forward. Who really wants to have a 28E and continue with our current statewide ILR process? Who actually feels like they don't have a voice in ILR? Who are potentially scared to speak out about ILR, or who is tired of fighting the fight and wants to go on their own path? So Stacy and I absolutely have to have direction, because we're hearing hearsay from legislators, recorders, stakeholders aren't happy. So is this the feeling of the majority of our association? Are we really not that happy? And where do we go from here? So depending on those discussions in that district meetings, the entire association, whether the outcome is the direction we need to go is one way. And if that direction is that we're going to put our differences aside, follow the 28E Code of Iowa, our policies and procedures, and get some additional revenues for our counties to, help offset our ongoing costs of running our counties, especially in our technology expenses, especially in Davis County, small Davis County poor here. Jamie, Adams County, you can relate. I can't afford this. So if that's the direction in the majority of our association, then so be it. And if it's not, and people want to go on their own path, then that's the direction our association will take. But we have to come together and give Stacy and I and census direction on what the majority of our association wants to do. And so we are going to encourage our executive board to allow Stacy and I to call those meetings, and we'll move forward with it. But the ESS board needs to know what's going on. And that is all I have to talk about.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would be happy to answer any questions, and I know Stacy would too. The only other update that I would share is that the bill that Senator Clemens, sponsored and filed, I would say is a very fair representation of the proposal that was advanced. It doesn't read exactly the same way that the language was submitted to them. On the other hand, you kind of know this is sort of a standard thing that happens when the legislative service agency is asked to draft a bill. they change things around, they have a style guide that they follow. You really do have their own way of looking at grammar. A couple of changes that come to mind were, for example, in the section that we were adding.
Can you move closer?
In the section that we were adding about recording, electronic recording of surveys, document formatting standards for surveys, the surveyors had asked, okay, we want to use this definition for what an additional parcel identifier was, and they wanted to use a particular definition for a parcel identification number. And our original thought was, well, this is only going to apply to surveys, but when it came back from the Legislative Service Agency, they added it into the general definitions in the recorded section. Okay, so, well, does that do any harm to have it in a different code section? The definition is there, and so I think we'll have to see how people feel about it once they read it. But on my read, having those definitions in a different section of the recorded code really didn't do any harm to what the surveyors said was they wanted to do. So those types of things that were included. I also want to say that, again, sort of in appreciation for the Senate Republican staff and also Senator Clement, when we read the early draft of that bill, we saw a number of technical things that needed to be fixed. And we provided those fixes to them, and they were gracious enough to include the vast majority of those issues in the final version that got filed. So, I would say, there's been an effort to sort of perfect that bill even before it got filed, and most of those actions were completed. So we appreciate that. So it doesn't read exactly the same way as what was submitted, but it's clear what the intent is, and it does all the things that you said you wanted to do. It has the fee changes, it has the allocation funds covered, it simplifies the fees, it addresses the document formatting ideas that came out of your document formatting working group. It includes basically everything that came out of the working group of reporters and surveyors. And so, there's a lot of moving parts in the bill. It's not a short bill, but it really covers everything that you wanted to do. And so you kind of just have these two dichotomous points of view about, Iowa land records. I'm speaking broadly here, that it's just going to have to be sorted out. And as Bob said, not giving up, not saying it's over, but at the same time, there are headwinds out there, and the chances of having your bill passed this year, they have diminished. And so, there are still some potential opportunities, and conversation can continue, and that's just kind of where we are. Am I stating that correctly, Stacy?
Any other comments or questions from the group, I guess? That you guys have, legislative consensus is here, and maybe Megan's still on the call too, but.
What was Megan talking about? Was that email that went out yesterday, or?
Just an update on what, from, got it.
The immediate need for discussion for statewide district legislative meeting. Is that the legislative meeting that we're gonna have at ISAC, or what?
No, it's not different.
This is different.
Right.
Can you still hear me?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Megan, you're still there, good.
Yeah, I have to leave at 1:00. What was the question? I can't hear very well.
Well, I'm just, my district, we were all kind of confused about that email where you had said, we'll be talking to the executive board to recommend immediate need for discussion for statewide district legislative meetings, so. Guess we're just kind of confused.
Okay, I can tell you. Stacy and I can call statewide meeting for legislative. And when we're at, we don't meet all the time. And so when we're as an association, you give Stacy and I direction on what to do at the Capitol. And so now we've had a new bill, which it's House File 328. And that's a different direction as opposed to what we hadn't done that as an association. And so now we have our Senate File 371 now again as well, which we didn't know that was going to happen for sure at the same time of the day. But we need some direction because there's all this hearsay under that dome that, what path do we need to go? Are we wanting to keep with ILR and do our current process? Or are we wanting to go on our own because there's frustrations? I don't know. But Stacy and I need all of this to be out in the open, and we need some direction. And the majority of our association is it needs to rule what we're going to move forward with. We got very little time to get everything done at that Capitol the way it is. So yes, we need some direction, and we can't wait till March when we meet again. So if it's easier for districts to meet as a district, or if you guys all just want to meet in one location, whether we do it by Zoom, I don't know. But everyone needs to voice their voices, not behind closed doors, and speak the truth. It's that simple, and it's that real. My mind is blown by all of this. So that is what it is. I don't even know who I'm talking to or asked that question. I'm not there. So who asked the question?
Denise, Megan.
Oh, hey, Denise.
Denise.
Okay.
Okay.
That's kind of where Stacy and I are at right now. We need the association's direction on what to do. And it's pretty simple. It's probably about 2 or 3 questions for you.
Okay.
So our executive board, we're going to ask the executive board and tell them what's going on and see what they recommend we should do, whether it's a meeting by Zoom, whether it's meetings within your districts where hopefully more people would be comfortable just talking with their district instead of 99 of us. I don't know. I would think that if you're being elected, you should be able to talk to a group of 100 people and say what your frustrations are, or if you want to go down a different path. I would think that you'd be able to speak your mind freely. We're not all.
Okay, so
did I answer the question or not?
Yeah, you did. Thank you very much.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
You're welcome.
Ken.
So currently, Megan and Stacy will be awaiting the exec board direction on, we have to have a meeting as the exec board to tell them how we want to proceed with the legislative meeting. That will happen tomorrow.
Okay, and there are 2 comments in the chat pod. One is from Hannah from Mitchell County saying she would agree. It's been hard to get clarity and consistency. The second from Erin in Boone, could we send a survey rather than in-person meetings?
But we can add that to the discussion for tomorrow.
Okay.
I'd like to say, this is Julie from Polk. I'd like to say that I want to give Megan and Stacy and Census a great big hug, a great big round of applause. You don't know, unless you've been around that dome, how hard it is to get some legislation. And what they're asking from us is that we have one voice speak, because it looks haphazard, but we need to have just one voice speak. And I think we can all agree that this is democracy. A majority should rule, and that's what we should agree to, that we have that one voice.
I agree, Julie.
Amen.
And I didn't start this just to start everything, but I just feel as an executive board for ESS, you guys better know what the heck's going on. This has to do with ILR and our legislative representatives, which is Stacy and I, for our association, need some direction And we just got to quit beating around the bush, and we need to talk about it as an association and move forward. So that is all I have to say. I have to go to another meeting.
Thanks,
Thank you guys.
Megan.
Thank you guys for your help. I appreciate it. And we'll all be in touch to see how we move forward. Thank you.
We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Megan.
I have a question. If this doesn't pass this year, do we think we have a good chance of getting it passed next year? Especially the fee increase. I know nobody has a crystal ball, nobody can predict the future, but
I think the one thing I will add is that we know that getting to this stage has taken time. A lot of discussions are happening. And our aim is to continue the discussion, whether it's with legislators or with stakeholders, so we reach a place where it gets us to what we want. And so it's a process and interact with all of us.
I'm just curious if we have any stakeholders out there in virtual land that have an opinion one way or the other.
Can you repeat that?
Is there any stakeholders online?
Yeah, if there are any stakeholders, besides recorders, if there are any stakeholders online that have an opinion one way or the other.
We did have a couple of people representing land title professionals, earlier anyway.
Anthony is still here. And Danielle is still here.
So,
Not to put anybody on the spot, if you don't want to talk, that's fine. I'm just curious as to
you have
feel for stakeholders.
Anthony Benston is on, committee is on. Eric from SCIT, he is on. Not sure. I don't recognize every name, whether they're a recorder or somebody else.
Most of the rest, I believe, are recorders.
Okay.
I read through the list.
So I think the question to the people online, does anybody else want to make a comment either by muting themselves or entering a message in the chat pod? And since it's added a message repeating what she said, since some people had a hard time.
I can provide my thoughts on it anyway. I think Megan's got a great point. You need direction from the association where to go. Obviously, I'm biased, but I appreciate the land record system, the land record system. Especially if you talk to anyone who's done any real estate practice in Illinois or other counties where you have different, however many counties there are, that's how many different ways you can do it, how many different fees you have to do. If we don't have a statewide submission portal, that makes my commercial practice very hard, and I have to then send someone to drive up to Duke County to file a deed. I need to file it today. So it really implicates us. So obviously, I'll be a little biased since I'm on this board, but I believe in land records. But I think I can't speak for the bar, but I know we had a discussion on the real estate listserv, and everyone was in favor of maintaining a statewide standard for fees and for submission. So there's that as well. I can't say that's an official position of the bar, but from those who felt compelled to respond to the listserv, that was a unanimous comments on there. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just speak for a second? Sure. I feel like there's some misconception going around that if we don't have a mandatory 2080, that ILR would go away and we wouldn't have a statewide submission service. That
ILR would simply just be an option for everyone to use for e-submission. They become an option and it opens up the competition for other e-recording vendors in the state of Iowa. 28E agreements were not meant to be mandatory. And I feel like if we as an association let us be an association and let us make decisions and let the 28E work as it's supposed to work. And if you get your fee increase, if you lose one county, so be it. But let's open up and do what the state of Iowa is really all about: competition and business, and letting those elected officials answer to their voters and not to an association.
Well, Renee, this is Julie, and I appreciate your comments. I can't think of an e-submission system, and maybe I'm wrong, that is not like, I don't think Paul Pate would want e-submission system that only a few recorders use. And if one recorder chooses to leave, then that gives permission to other recorders to leave, and I think that just eliminates a statewide system. So, and I appreciate your sentiments and your comments, but I think that you have to have only one way to submit instead of several different ways.
Add to that too, if you have one county out of 99 that doesn't participate, it's not a statewide system. It's just not.
It is a statewide system because we would still upload our documents to it, and it's still an option for e-recording our submitters to use it as a statewide system.
I would just, I'm gonna just state a fact, okay? I'm gonna be as objective as I can be. I hope I can be objective, but here's the way the math works. If one or more large counties decide not to process documents through e-submission, that means that, and this is just reality, revenue that supports our operation comes primarily from e-submission today. And so if that revenue stream is undermined, that does have a real impact on the capacity of the statewide system to work. Okay, and so when we think about budget projections or whatever, you know, and you know that a certain population center is not going to be participating because they're using a different vendor, that means that revenue is not coming in to support the system as a whole. So I would just say, you know, you have to be grateful for the fact that a county like Polk, for example, our largest county, who has the capacity to do anything they want, chooses to support the whole. And that's just a mathematical fact. So I'll stop there.
But if you get your fee increase, you're going to get more money. Plus, you're still going to get the money for people who choose to use you as an e-recording service. Even if our county does not use you as our main e-recording vendor, they would still have the choice to use Iowa Land Records as a statewide e-recording service.
Can I have some clarification, and maybe Renee, you're the best one, would be then, if a county chose to go on their own, I guess, the stakeholder, the filer though, would have an option if they want to record, I guess, through the county direct or through ILR?
That's
So it's
correct.
up to the filer?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. So the attorneys And everyone who uses them now would still have them as an option.
Okay.
I would be interested in answering this question. Would it not be true that the county itself would be primarily promoting the system that serves their county and not promoting the use of Iowa land records? It wouldn't be choose one. It would be, county is benefiting from the local service provider system. Then there is a natural tendency, to promote one or the other. And I still have to come back to the math. If the county is actively promoting an alternative system, possibly because there's some financial benefit to it, then there is a likelihood, I think, that people will migrate away from Iowa land records to the county system, just as it does when you are promoting a private search engine, as opposed to encouraging people to go to Iowa land records where you can search for free. So I don't think it's quite accurate to say that everybody's just going to be given a free choice. I think there will be some influence there, and we just have to acknowledge that.
So I heard your comment there about telling people to pay for our search or whatever. We have our free search. We do not promote the one that people have to pay for. Let me pose this back to you. So if we open the door for competition in Iowa for e-recording, and that e-recording fee of $3 is not stated in code anymore, that opens the door for you to say, well, we're going to have to raise our fee to $4 or $5. So you might lose revenue, but you can offset that with other ideas.
It is a fact that we are legislatively prohibited from charging any fee for viewing or downloading documents. That is true. The service fee that we charge for e-submission is legislatively established. That's nothing, at least currently, that we can make a decision on. So I do not believe it would be a true statement under current law that we would have the ability to adjust our prices accordingly. That just can't happen right now.
I didn't say right now. I said if we open it up for competition in the state, you wouldn't have that $3 threshold.
I can, that's only speculation. I really, it's hard for me to think that especially given our legislative history, where we have had to really work hard to persuade people to allow us to charge a fee for e-submission. And part of the equation of that was, okay, you can charge the e-submission fee, but you still can't charge for accessing, downloading, printing documents. I mean, there is a sort of the implicit agreement that's in place, and I'm being honest with you, I have a hard time seeing where the stakeholders would agree just to remove all of the constraints that we have to operate under. I have a hard time imagining that would happen. So believe me, there are days when I wish somebody would unleash us and just let us be in the marketplace. And even though some people might support that, I really don't believe that the stakeholders or the legislature would allow us to do that. So We can have that debate, I guess, but it doesn't seem real to me.
Okay, so just to
just-
clarify
yeah.
for everyone on the phone, the proposal would be, that's in House File 328, is not to get rid of Iowa land records, is not to get rid of a statewide system. It's simply to open up and give us the option. ILR would remain an option for e-recording in the state of Iowa. And that's basically all that does. And we were hopeful that we would get some discussion going on the fee increase if we could come together and compromise on both issues and maybe have a bill together to do all that. Again, I will say 28E agreements are not meant to be mandatory. And I'm really shocked that the state allowed that to ever be a mandatory 28E. And if you all saw that the governor signed the executive order for the Doge committee, and you saw the number 2 purpose and duties is to review all 28E agreements in the state. It's not meant to be a mandatory thing. So let's let the system work as it's supposed to be.
I want to go on the record as saying that I oppose anything that would allow a recorder, any recorder to step out of the e-submission system, which could create chaos.
If Bob were here, he would say that dialogue can still happen. Okay, there's still dialogue to be had, and I'm not sure he would agree. I'm putting words in his mouth. I'm not sure he would agree that that the current draft of the other bill is as benign as you suggest. So if that's the intent, then there can be further conversation, and so we may not be able to agree to it over the phone, but there's still room for conversation, and we'll see where that goes. Anne has asked a question. Any further discussion?
Yes, will there be an amendment coming on the House File 328? Do we know?
So I
We
can
have
speak
been
to
told.
that.
Yes.
Okay.
We were hoping to have discussions between the legislative, Stacy, Megan, the executive board, and just see if we can come to some agreements. So yes, there is an amendment, but we were kind of waiting to see what other thoughts were. And Stacy, maybe you can, did you understand it differently?
No, we were just waiting to see the amendment. Because I thought you were going to go back and add some fee language. And we just asked to, when the amendment comes out, if you could do us the honor of looking at it, or I think that's where we left it.
That's why I understood it as well.
Yeah, that's Lisa talking, Kent. So, okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to add that the discussion that we were told could possibly happen. Oh,
Consensus is going to move to the mic.
sorry, I'm far from the mic. I just wanted to say that, yeah, we do understand that there might be more meetings, and we are waiting for updates on that from the representative involved. So that's really the update that currently exists. There isn't anything that has been set written or anything like that, but we are on standby. Bob, Nick, and I are on standby.
I would, I'm being neutral here, I would just say that if there is a feeling that the representatives involved are waiting to hear something before they develop it or release another amendment, I think maybe some further conversation is needed. Maybe there's a difference of impression about what the expectations are, and so kind of getting on the same page with that probably would be a good idea. And we'll pass that on to Bobby.
Okay. That sounds good. Thank you.
Do you want me to read Ann's comment? Ann's comment is, this is important for ICRA to discuss and deeply understand Iowa land records. That's why the certification committee began the discussion with our retirees last year and continue to work on past, present, future.
I don't have anything else, Ann, on that. Yes, we can move on to policies and procedures, and I will be very quick on this. So I would turn your attention, let me go back to the document that we're sharing. And I just want to move ahead. I'll give you a page number here. This is the last page, actually, page 53 in the document. And we're not asking for any action on this. This is something that we discussed with the Standards Committee at their last meeting, because it's the Standards Subcommittee that has purview over policies and procedures. So we opened this discussion with them, and I just wanted to kind of give it to you, not to debate, but just so next time it isn't the first time you've heard about it, okay? So the policy issue is, or the practical operational issue is, and we do this for security reasons, is that if somebody doesn't log in to the central authentication system for 120 days, their account is made inactive. It's not entirely deleted, but it's made inactive. And an administrator of an organization like a bank or a moving company or so on could go into there as an administrator, and the employee says, hey, I can't get in. They should log in as the administrator and reactivate that user, okay, kind of bring them back in. But there are certain circumstances, such as with individual users that are not associated with an organization, that they don't have an administrator to ask to help them with that. And they end up at our doorstep. Well, when a user is deactivated, their username is deactivated too. And the way we're structured right now, that username actually goes back into the pool. And somebody new could come in and choose that username, and then there's no way that previous user can get their old username back. It's gone. And so we don't necessarily communicate that clearly in our terms of service today. And so the short story of this change to our terms of service would be to declare, hey, if you don't log in for 120 days and your account becomes, please be aware that you don't have any right to your username. Usernames belong to our land records. And we'll help you get a new username, and we'll help you get back in, but it's not going to be with your old username if somebody else is taking it. So
can you share your screen again, please?
I'm not sure.
Not currently.
Okay.
Thank you. That's page 53.
Okay, again, this is on the last page of the packet. So I would just draw that. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Never mind. Okay, here we are. So the idea is we should do a better job of communicating with our users to say, Okay, this is how it works, but we didn't really explicitly say it in our terms of service. We should do that. And so this is the first draft of what that would look like.
I'm sorry, I still don't think we're seeing the correct screen.
I don't have that page in my packet. 53?
Yeah, the very last page.
Very last.
Okay, I'm sharing the packet now.
Yep, there you go.
There you go.
Okay. So, anyway, I've already described it. I'm informing you, I would invite you to look at it, provide any comments to us. The next standard subcommittee meeting is in April, and we'll take it up. Other than that, I just would, some of the last two items in terms of project updates, one is with regard to the point of sale system. You know, we have been working on improvements to the reporting from our point of sale provider occasionally. I guess it's now occasionally. They are not generating the reports that we need to generate a distribution file to the counties, and that is that sometimes delays distributions. This source of the issue is not our service provider, it is First Data Advisor. And for whatever reason, they are not generating the reports consistently, but I just want everybody to be aware that we're working on it, and we're not the only ones affected by it. There are other organizations that use the point of sale system that are having the same issue. So, do you have a status report on that? Any news?
Haven't had one in a few weeks, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I just, in the interest of, if you were concerned about it, or you observed it, or said, what the heck is going on with that? That's where we are. And then I already mentioned earlier that Tully is in the process of migrating our operating system to a new version. He is estimating that it will be May or June before we fully completed that migration. So there are a lot of moving parts to it, but I just wanted to give you an update on that. So you had a comment.
On point of sale, anyone who uses a card in your office, it will display as electronic services system on their credit card bill. It doesn't say Iowa Land Records. It doesn't say Wapello County. It says electronic services system. So Kristen has developed this item that we will distribute to all of you so that you can choose to print and cut and include if you're mailing out both licenses, because we know we have a lot of those coming up. I know ATVs were up, just so that we stop some confusion. We do get several calls a week that say, what is this? And so we're hoping to slow down those calls and not have any chargebacks, because then we have to chase down the money. So these will be coming out.
And that completes the agenda for this meeting.
This is Jamie. I have a quick question. So Lynn County was participating in kind of a pilot project. I think it was Lynn County, to register boats online through our point of sale system. How's that going?
It's going well. It's way busier than last year. I don't know if you can hear me. Looking at last year's sales compared to this year's sales, there's so many more people registering online. It's really an easy process for me anyway.
Is that, are we opening that up to other counties yet?
No, I would just say that we have a voluntary 28-year agreement between Iowa Land Records and Lynn County. And Lynn County came to us, if I just can repeat myself and say, they came to us and said, can we use your online payment system for our online registration system. We said, yes, we're glad to work with you on that. And so this is the second year of implementation of that, and as Samantha said, it sort of picked up some momentum, and people are registering online now. Then, we are actually working with Lynn County to expand the use of that payment system to 2 other applications, not related to recorders. One of them is for their Department of Health, and I forget what the other one is. And so they're building their own applications, and they're connecting us, and we provide the payment services. With regard to the registration renewal system, what Lynn County did was, sort of as a part of the agreement, they agreed to share their code and their technology with us, with the idea that we might be able to extend that same type of service to other counties, particularly smaller counties, but for anybody that wanted to participate. And honestly, while it's not named, this is one of the goals of the modernization project. So if we had some additional development capacity, we kind of know what to do, and we've got a head start because Lynn County already built it, and they've already given their permission for us to use it, and we would love to do it. But with our limited development capacity right now, I just can't get started on it. So the hope was that we would be able to have some more resources and work on it. And I don't have an estimate on when we could start on it. I'm not even going to talk about other methods of securing revenue because we just don't have the bandwidth to take it on right now. So, Jamie, I wish I could say, hey, we're ready to go, but we're just not. It's going to be a while before we can. Sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate the update.
Can I ask a question or thoughts on, do we have a list or get one or know what it would take if a county were to choose to use a provider? As far as, I guess, what that provider would have to
Go through?
Yeah.
Security sessions, kind of like
Or even, I mean, I know we're looking at cost, and that sort of thing, but just anything else that, I mean, I probably wouldn't know everything and think of everything if I had to call my vendor and say, can you provide this, I just feel like it would be a lot more than what I would think or I would know. I don't know if that's something we can put together, if that's not worth it, if we don't want to go there, but.
Are you asking, do other service providers provide that e-recording service? And what the cost would be?
Yes, somewhat, but as far as if they didn't, maybe, and wanted to.
Okay.
What would all entail?
Okay, because I think most vendors. I thought most vendors besides Solution offer an e-recording service. Like we already have it in our package that we pay for. But I'm not sure how the other vendors do it. Yeah. Other county or other vendors, I think they charge an extra fee in order to add that on. But I'm not sure what that fee is.
I don't have anything further. Ann?
Thank you, everybody. Good meeting.
Thanks, Jolene. I hope you're feeling better.
Thank you.